Okay, guys, our second one on the list is Darkest Night by Victory Point Games. It plays 1 to 6 players, but once again, we're going to be looking at this as a solo adventure, but it plays as a great multiplayer. To be honest, I really was intrigued by this game because I came across it and really no one's ever heard of it, quite frankly. It has great play mechanics, it's got a great theme, but like I said, it doesn't have a lot of word of mouth behind it. So one of the reasons I wanted to even put this up was to get word of it out there more so. So anyways, so just basically the story of the game is basically it's got kind of a Diablo D&D kind of theme to it. You are a group of heroes who return to the land only to find that the land has already fallen to the forces of an evil necromancer. The king's army is destroyed and the people are all living in fear. So it is your job to, in a kind of guerrilla warfare type style, to go up against the forces of the evil necromancer who's already won. His forces are all over the place, are crawling all over the place. Vampires, zombies, curses, demons, the whole like are all over the place. And so it's your job as a team to go out cooperatively and basically retrieve these keys so that you can retrieve these holy relics that you need to defeat the necromancer. And at that point, once you have one, you can either choose to face him in battle and try and slay him, or you can try and assemble them over at the monastery. But the thing is that the forces of darkness are waging war against the monastery, which is the last outpost for good. And if that outpost falls, then all is lost. So you're out there trying to get these relics before the necromancer can destroy your stronghold. And unfortunately, the longer it takes to get the relics, the stronger the necromancer becomes. So if you like Diablo, if you like D&D, if you're like me and grew up reading Dragonlance, does this sound like your bag? Hell yeah, it does. So let's check it out.
Okay, guys, well, we're about to get started, but as you can see, this game takes a fair amount of table space. I apologize for the gloss over on the side of the cards, but we'll go a little bit more in depth over there in a couple minutes. But right now, I want to talk a little bit about your characters. As you can see, you can choose up to 4 characters for the game, and basically each one has their own special power set, as you can see that I've already pre-selected. So when you're setting up, you're going to start with choosing your characters of who do you want. Do you want a wizard? Do you want a scholar? Do you want a knight? Do you want a rogue? Do you want a priest? Do you want a crusader? So you're going to choose your party, and once you've done so, you're going to sit down, you're going to choose their power set. Now let's take a look over here at the wizard for a moment. Each character has their own stats. So in this case, you can see clearly that this is the grace track right here, this track with a dove. That just basically means like that's how many hits they can take before they die. As in, if they got knocked down to 0 grace, then technically as long as they didn't get hit again, then they'd be fine. But it's kind of like your extra armor, if you will. If you had 0 grace and you got hit, then your character would die. So each different character has their own different set of stats. In this case, the wizard has only 3 grace. And then this is something called a component called secrecy. Basically, secrecy, a major component of this game, is the necromancer trying to find your hero. So secrecy is really important because that's what's going to stop him from basically being able to detect you or being able to... it's going to shield you from him attacking you directly, which is definitely not something you want to happen, as without a holy relic, you literally are it is impossible for you to defeat the necromancer. So so we're going to put this back over here. We're going to put this back over here. Good. So that's a little bit about how stats work. Now, you'll see over here that this character already has some powers already pre-selected. You'll notice there's a little icon on the top, which just basically means that these are the icons. This is only dealing with the base game right now. There are different icons for other expansions. But basically, these are your choice of starting powers. There are 4 cards in a character's deck, so you can see the wizard's deck is over here. There are 4 cards in the wizard's deck. And a starter deck that has 4 icons, which just means you can use these as your starting abilities. You can choose 3 out of a possible 4 choices. Another thing to notice is that some of these things say actions, which is when it's your turn and you could take an action. We'll talk about that in a couple seconds. You can do this as an action. But you'll also see that some of the cards have a word called tactic. Basically, you can have as many tactics as you want as an ability, but when you're actually in combat, when you're actually doing something against an enemy, you can only choose one. So tactics are really great to kind of give you some extra ability or ways around winning an encounter. But the sad thing is that you can only do one at a time. Some of these tactics do also have basically an action that an active bonus or strength that happens. So in this case, it's you get 2 dice when excluding, deactivate, and exhaust if you fail combat or use another tactic. We'll talk about eluding, sorry, in a second. It's eluding. I can read, really. So there are some special, unique factors in those when you're choosing your power sets. Now, I think we're just about ready to rock and roll here with our party, but let's see what's going on with the board first. Now, before we begin, I did want us to be able to take a little look at the board real briefly. First of all, you'll see that our heroes are all over here at the monastery, which is just basically our outpost. Once again, it's part of the victory condition for the necromancer to win is to overwhelm the monastery. So this is a very important component of the game design. But you'll see that there are different places in this region. We have the monastery, we have a forest, we have a mountain up there, a village, there are ruins, swamps, and of course the king's castle. Now each one of these places has their own kind of set of information, and really I like the fact that it's really laid out clearly on the board. For instance, let's take a look at this forest for a moment. You'll notice the fact that it says search for, and there's keys and a picture of a treasure chest. What that just basically indicates is that if your character is over here in this area, and if he's searching, he's more likely to find a key or a treasure chest. Now, the value of finding a treasure chest is basically the treasure chests allow you to draw an extra power card that we had already kind of talked about beforehand. So you can allow yourself to build up a stronger character. But you can see that the search difficulty is 4, so that means that you're going to have to roll at least a 4 on the dice to be able to collect something. Now let's look over here at a different spot. We'll see over here in the ruins, and here's our necromancer who's looking actually quite grumpy as always. You'll see that the ruins have a different icon. There are 2 keys. Well, what that means is that you're twice as likely to find a key over here in the ruins. Up at the swamp, you'll notice the fact that there are some other symbols, one of which is an epiphany. And the cool thing about the epiphany is that's the only card which you can, or I'm sorry, not card, but that's the only thing that can allow you to go through your power deck and choose a specific power to add. The other ones are all, you can choose to, or put one back, or you can, just pick up a random power. So it allows you to really choose, but the only place you can find such a thing is in the swamp. And you can also see the magic bottle right there, which allows you to have rerolls. So one of the nice things about this board is that it's already set up, so you don't have to, all you gotta do is flip a card and figure out how many things you rolled, and you're all good to go as to what you discovered in your search. Now, one of the other things that I think is really cool about this board is you may notice these little pips, like right here, right here, right here, and right here, and so on. This is how the game dictates where the necromancer is traveling. So as in, what's going to happen is you're going to roll for the necromancer, and he's going to see who he detects on the board. And if he does not detect anyone, then he follows the trackings on the board, and the board really determines what direction he continues on. So it's just a nice mechanic that really just stops you from having to worry about having just another thing in regards to how to do this game and how to play this game correctly. So before we start our adventure, let's go ahead and, well, take a look at what we can do. One of the nice things about this game's play design is because it's set for solitaire games, they really understand the fact that there are a lot of steps in this game, and that it really helps to have everything mapped out. So before we start our game and take our first action, it'd be wise to kind of take a look at the structure of the game. You can see on the left side where it says Hero Turn that it really lays out basically different conditions of starting a turn and the progression of things. Basically, here's your startup situations where if any of these things are applicable, they take action and effect. Then there's an event phase, and if you're starting off in the monastery, and I'll show you the monastery, how that works in the beginning. If you're in the monastery, then you basically get to skip pulling from the event deck. But otherwise, these factors all come into play and happen. And then lastly, you get to choose an action, and within that action, which is over on the right, certain things, your stats will change, or certain things will occur. And then lastly, there's some end conditions before the turn is over. In regards to your actions, you can see that you can travel, and you can hide, you can attack, you can search, you can pray only if you're in the monastery. You can retrieve a relic as an action, or you can use one of your power cards, which I kind of explained previously beforehand. So I think we're about ready to go take it to this necromancer, so let's get started. Now, before we begin, you may say, James, I thought you said that part of the theme of this game was that the necromancer's forces were already all over the place, and where are all the bad guys? Where are all the zombies? Where are all the creatures? So before we get started, remember I told you about those cards that were glowing beforehand that didn't look so great? Well, here they are over here. This is the quest deck, which is included in the first expansion. Artifact deck, where you can get artifacts. The map deck, which also both tells you where your items are recovered when you are successful at searching for them, as well as where enemies are placed. And lastly, the event deck. A little bit later on, I'll show you the darkness deck so that you can see what that's like, which is from the third expansion. But the event deck basically is going to be a lot of your random encounters. Typically, they're not that positive. Anyway, so let's get started with setting up the board. So as you can see here, when you flip over your first card, it's going to tell you how to set up and where things are going to be located. So you can see in the mountains, we're going to need a lich. He's over here in the mountains. In the castle, there's an evil presence detected in the castle. In the village, a small group of spies. In the forest, some skeletons. The ruins, there's a shroud. And we don't place anything from the monastery because this is only set up, and we never place anything from the monastery unless there's a buildup. If we have 4 of these guys in one location and a 5th is added, then it starts to go over in the monastery. Now that that is all set, we have to set up a couple things. We have to explain a couple things about this necromancer. Remember how he's not the nicest guy? Well, let me also explain why. When he travels the board, whenever he leaves a location or whenever he starts in a location, well, the first thing that happens is an additional blight is established. So in this case, let's say he was over in the village. Because I turned the card, which is upside down, we look in the village. Oh, there's a corruption. So at his turn, we would add a corruption. So that's kind of how enemies can be added on. And like I said, if you have 4 enemies here and a 5th one is added, that extra overflow is going to come over here to the monastery. And if you get 4 bad guys there at the monastery and a 5th one is added, the game is over. Okay, it looks like we're about good to go. So when starting the game, you basically can choose any order that you'd like. So as in the first round, the scholar can go first, and then the knight can go, and then the druid can go, and then the wizard can take his turn, and then it will be the necromancer's turn. Once the necromancer's done, the round starts over. Now, the interesting thing is that at that point, heroes can go in whatever choice they want. So if the scholar went first in the first round, in the second round, you know what, the druid can go next, and then the scholar can go. So you're not really dictated or hampered by a specific order that you have to go in. So we're going to actually start with the scholar, and we're going to let him go ahead, and his action is going to be moving down to the forest. Now, just because they're, as I was showing you on the card before, none of those starting situations trigger with the Necromancer, or there's no Holy Relic already out on the table, so that's not an issue either. And because we started in the monastery, there's no event card to be played, so we're going to go right down to the forest. And as you can see, there's already a villain already there. Our skeleton has these stats here. He has a 4 for defense, and he has a 4 for illusion. So basically, because there's a villain already there, we have to deal with that villain. Typically, when just moving, you just gain a secrecy, but as this is the beginning of the game and the scholar's stats are at a full strength, as you can see over here, he really can't go much higher than his starting position, so he's not allowed to move that secrecy up because he moved. So because we're dealing with the skeleton, we've got to roll to see if we can beat him, and I get to choose, do I want to take him on in a fight, or do I want to try and elude him? Now, basing off of my characters and his skill set, let's see. He has a bonus in being able to search. That's not very helpful here. He can elude with 2 dice, using 2 dice. That might be helpful. And he gets a bonus of exhaust after you make any die roll to reroll. So I think I'm going to use the foresight. So I'm going to choose to use the tactic of foresight. I get 2 dice. And wish me luck. I rolled a 2 and I rolled a 5. Let's see here. And since I chose to elude, 5 is greater than 4, so that means I did elude the skeleton. Now, if I had failed that, as you can see, there's this little sign of crossbones. That would mean that my scholar would just take damage. But he didn't. He eluded, so I am good to go. That ends his turn. And for the record, I don't think I mentioned this before, this little chest is our sacred relic. You can notice that before that they are all over the board, because you basically have a choice to gain 3, though I do need only 1 to take on the Necromancer. But of course, I've got to earn it, so I got to flip this back over. So the Scholar's turn is done, and now I'm going to have the Knight. I'm going to have him travel. He's going to use his ability, his hard ride ability, which is over here, as you can see. He has an Oath of Purging, which strengthens his ability to fight. He has a hard ride ability that allows him to move twice, but he doesn't gain any secrecy. And he has a charge, which allows him to fight well as well. So I'm going to use his hard ride ability and allow him to move twice over here to the swamp. 1, 2, to the swamp, where there's a shade waiting. The shades stats are as follows. All right, so he has a 3 for defense, and he has a 5 elude. Well, my knight isn't probably so great at eluding, but he's great at fighting, so I'm going to have him take him on. So, using his ability, let's see here. I'm going to go with the charge. I'm going to use that charge tactic that we saw before. I'm going to have him fight with 2 dice. So here we go. A 3 and a 3. And since 3 is equal to 3, as you can see by his defense, that means I'm successful. Now, for the record, when you go into a place and you're facing a villain or a creature, unfortunately, you don't destroy it. If you defeat its defense, this 5 over here, as you can see, I have the choice of attacking during my turn, and maybe next turn we'll see this, where I can destroy this shade. But right now he's still in play, but I was able to defend him and ward him off, and my knight's turn is done. Now let's see, what about this wizard? Let's have him travel to the village. So he's going to move over here. He's over here at the village. Now, because he ends there, as you can see, there are no conditions of eluding or defense for the spies. But you can also see that it says lose 1 secrecy each turn. So that means that he, Mr. Wizard, is going to lose a secrecy as a result of landing in that spot with that villain. So we're going to do that. Over here, and we move that down here. Oh, sorry, this got bumped over a little bit. He's still full strength. Okay. And lastly, the Druid. So, Mr. Druid, Let's see here. Where are you going to move? I'm also going to put you in the village. Just going to move him over here as he knocks over his fellow wizard. Not a lot of respect, I guess, between the heroes. And he's also going to have to deal with the spy. So let's go over here to the druid. And place this here. And place this, my secrecy token, over here. Very good. And so he's going to lose a secrecy. That will end his turn. Now, moving over here to the Necromancer, that means this Necromancer's in play. And the first thing that's going to happen is this Darkness track is going to move up from 0 to 1. Now, the importance of this is that when he gets over here to 10, he gets a new ability. Now, these abilities are already dictated by the game in the base game on the bottom of the board. If you buy the third expansion, then that you can change these powers to something else. But for now, we're going to focus on these. So when he reaches 10, he gains this ability, which is to create 2 blights if a Necromancer's location has none. Once he reaches 20, he gets the ability to create an extra blight whenever he rolls a 1 or a 2. And we're going to see how that mechanic works in a moment. When he reaches 25, all blights have +1 might, which is their strength to be able to try and defeat them, basically. And then lastly, if anything raises the darkness further, create a blight at the monastery. And obviously, like we said and talked beforehand about, the monastery is all about his victory condition. So he's only at 1, thank goodness. But now it's time for him to make a move. So he's going to roll 1 dice. He's going to see what he gets. He got a 5. Now, that means that anything lower than 5, so 4, 3, 2, 1, or 0, the Necromancer detects. So let's see if he detects anyone. Well, let's see. The Druid over here, he's at 5. So far we're okay. The Scholar is at 6. So he's fine too. The Wizard is at 4. That means he's detected. And the Knight is at 6. So he's not detected. So far it looks like our Necromancer has picked up on the presence of the Wizard. So he's going to move in the direction of the Wizard 1 space. And it turns out that that's exactly where the Wizard is, though we can't directly attack him because the Wizard is not at 0. Suddenly, I feel like I'm playing Gauntlet. Anyways, because he's moved to this new space, it's time for him to create a blight. So let's see what he does. In the village, it looks like there is a taint in the village. So we're going to come over here. We're going to place this over here in the village. Uh-oh. So now it looks like the taint's special ability is it doesn't allow anyone inside the taint to gain a grace. Not good for our heroes. So that ends the first part of our turn. Now, one of these nice things which I like about this game is it comes with these little markers. So if ever you're playing, and I forget this sometimes, but as long as I'm not doing something else, it doesn't really matter, you can turn one of these to kind of indicate that you've already gone, which is really nice as a mechanic in case you get lost or you get distracted. So let's move on from there. Now, as they say in Street Fighter, round 2. Now we're going to start over here with our Scholar because he's our go-to guy. We're hoping that he's going to be able to pull off some keys. But before we do anything else, we need to deal with the event deck. So we're going to come over here, pull from our event deck. It's a very large stack just because I also, like I said, I have a couple expansions, so that's what's going to do it. We're going to see what happens here. So rescue. So there's 5 defense and 4 to elude. If I win, I get an extra grace. If I lose, the darkness track moves up 1. Let's see here. I think based on the Scholar, I'm going to say he seems to have a better chance of eluding because of that tactic. So I'm going to go with eluding. I'm going to take 2 dice. Dice are very good to have. If you have spare dice, that will fare you well in this game. 2 dice. I'm trying to beat 4 for that elude. Let's see what happens.
I got a 6 and I got a 3. Well, I'm going to keep that 6, which makes me elude. I gain a grace, but unfortunately he's already at his max grace, so that's not an issue. But more importantly, I did not fail. That marker for that darkness track is just going to stay there, and I can move along forward. So now that I've resolved that event, I can move on and I can say, okay, I'm going to search. All right, let's see here. Because I got a 3, but I needed a 4 to be able to find an item, preferably a key. So it looks like that ends our scholar's turn, so we're going to go ahead and change his little token and call a night for Mr. Scholar. Now, let's see here. Next, let's go over here to this wizard. Now, let's see. The wizard, we're going to have him go ahead. He's got to take his event situation here. At the beginning of his turn, though, he loses a secrecy because of that spy, so that is not very helpful. And it's also not going to help because he loses an additional secrecy because of that necromancer, because that necromancer is there. So my wizard is down to already 2. You guys can see this. It's not pretty. He's down to 2 secrecy already. The game just started. That is not boding well. So let's go ahead and hit this event deck, and hopefully the consequences won't be too ugly. All right. Guarded Trove. Ugh, this does not look good at all. 6 defense, 6 evade. If I win, I'm probably not going to. I get to lose 1 secrecy and draw a search result. If I fail in a fight, I take a damage. If I fail to elude, I spend 1 secrecy or draw another event. I do not want to draw another event after this. So I'm going to go with, because the fail fight, I only take it 1 damage. I'm at full strength. I'm actually going to just go for fighting, and just if I lose it, I lose it. So he is going to roll, and he's got to deal with a 6. Let's see if I can beat that. A 6. That is shocking. I was not expecting that. Well done, Mr. Wizard. Well done. So win, lose 1 secrecy, and draw a search result. Okay. In that case, well, I don't like losing the secrecy. I do like gaining that search result. So let's see what that is. So we're going to flip this map card, and I'm in the village. So that means that I received a treasure chest. The treasure chest isn't that big a deal, but you know what? I will take it, and I will be happy. All right, so he has a treasure chest. That's great. And basically, a treasure chest is great because it allows you to, when you cash it in, it allows you to, whatchamacallit? When you cash it in, I'm sorry, I'm just speaking out loud. When you cash it in, it allows you to grab a power, a random power, and you can also give it to someone else, which is really helpful. So, so you can hold up on them for a while and then give them to the person that you think is going to be taking on the necromancer. Or you can use it for yourself and just try and power yourself up. Now that that is done, for my action, I'm going to have this wizard. He's going to use his ability, which is he's going to deactivate, let's activate and choose a type of blight. That type of blight has no effect. I'm going to do that. I'm going to activate it. And you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to use it. I'm going to use it on the spy. So it no longer will make me lose a secrecy by just being there, which is great. So that is done. So that ends the wizard's turn. Now, moving on to the druid. Well, the nice thing about the druid is that because he's there, he doesn't lose a secrecy because of the spy, which is nice. Unfortunately, he does lose a secrecy due to the necromancer, which is not so nice. So we're going to go over here to the druid. We're going to lower his secrecy by 1. And then we're going to have to deal with that event deck. Let's see what we got. The Horde. The Horde. All right, now you can see compared to secrecy. Well, my druid secrecy is at 5. So since it's at 5, it would be under +4. So I'm dealing with someone who has a 4 defense and a 3 elude. Now my druid, let's see here, his powers is he allows to elude with using 2 dice. He can exhaust after you draw an event card to discard the card without any effect.
or he can ignore Blight's effects unless the Necromancer is present. I'm going to go with the Elude 2. I'm going to go with the Camouflage ability. So I'm going to use 2 dice, 1 and 2. And we're going to try and elude this horde. So that means we've got to beat a 3. Done and done. All right, so excellent. Success. So that means that we are all good, which is great. And now we can choose to do something for our turn. So we can travel, we can hide, we can attack, we can search, we can use a power. So let's see here. I'm going to go for, let's take this spy out because these spies are not good. So I'm going to actually, I'm going to attack this spy. Let's see if I have any, do I have any attacking things, strengths? No. So we're just going to take 1 die. And here we go. Hopefully I need to get, because I'm trying to take out this spy over here, I've got to get a 5. I've got to get a 5. And if I do not get that 5, then unfortunately the consequences are over here. So as you can see, if I have to roll a 5 or a 6 to beat him, or I take the consequences, which are over here, lose 1 secrecy. So let's see what happens. 5. Oh, it's like magic. Alrighty, so Mr. Spy is gone. Adios, muchacho. That's very good. Now, so Mr. Druid, all done. And lastly, the Knight, who's over here. Now, Mr. Knight, we are, not Michael Knight, Mr. Knight. We have to deal with this event deck. So let's do that. Let's knock out the park, and then let's go to town. Another horde. Now, the Night Secrecy is at 6. So seeing as the Night Secrecy is at 6, we're in the same situation. We have to roll, we choose to fight, or we can choose to elude. Now, because that Knight has so much fighting powers, I'm going to go with actually to fight. So he's going to take this guy on. A 5 and a 5. So he beats the horde. Just beat them all up. Nicely done. Alrighty, and then we're good to go. Awesome. Moving on. Now, what is he going to do now? Well, honestly, I could take out the Shade. That's definitely a possibility. I could take him on. But I gotta tell you, that Epiphany would be great. But if I can, but my Knight isn't such a great searcher. So I'm thinking maybe what I'll do is clear that out and then let someone else get over there to try and do that. So, yeah, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna take on the Shade using my 2 dice from the charge tactic, and we're gonna see if I can take him down. Nope, not at all. So because I failed at this, let's take a look over here at the Shade. So he is, I had to roll 5. I did not roll 5 over here to try and take him out. So that's the consequence. I take a damage, which is not so fun. So my Knight is down to 3. That ends his turn. And now it's the Necromancer's turn. Ugh. So he's going to roll to see if he detects anyone. 1. So that means he detects only anyone who is 1 or less. Now, obviously, all of my guys, let's see here, Mr. Wizard is only 1, actually, so he just got by. All my guys are not detected. So basically, he's going to follow the board. So let's see here. Where is there a pip that has a 1? Right there. So he's going to follow in this direction. So the Necromancer leaves. Phew. And he goes over there. When he starts in a new location, he creates a Blight. So let's see what we have over here. He's over in the mountains, and in the mountains, a Shade appears. Oh, that place is getting a little full, which is not good. Not good at all. All right, and unfortunately I did forget this part as I had to increase the darkness track, so don't kill me on the internet, so sorry about that. He's up to 2 now. Once he gets to 10, he's going to get that new power, which is not going to be helpful. Another thing to learn to know about these blights, as these guys are called, is that you can't defeat the Necromancer if there's a blight present. That's very important. And that also becomes a major issue when he receives this power of +10, create 2 blights of Necromancer's location, if Necromancer's location has none. Because if you take on, say for instance, you have the Holy Relic and you go after the Necromancer, and say for instance, you beat him. If there is a blight there, then unfortunately that blight takes the damage for the Necromancer and the Necromancer runs. So you've got to basically trick him into being a place where there are no other blights. Otherwise, they're going to absorb the damage and you're not going to be able to take him out. So, the Necromancer's moved over here. He's completed his turn. And now we're moving on to the 3rd round. So my wizard friend is going to move on over. I'm going to move him over here with the shade. But first, I'm going to have the knight try and take on the shade, because maybe he can take him out before I move the wizard over there, because I want some people over here to get hopefully some of these epiphanies. So I'm going to have the knight do that, but first, event deck. Dark Servant. That's just got a lovely title. Alrighty, so my friend here, the servant, is based on of your secrecy, and the knight has 6 secrecy. So we're looking at the inability, so you cannot fight him, that's not good, and you have to try and elude him, or else I lose 1 secrecy. That's not boding well for my knight, who's all about fighting. So he is going to use 1 dice. He got a 3. He needed a 5, so he loses 1 secrecy. Not so great. Now we can try and deal with the shade. So he is going to attack the shade using the charge tactic, which allows him to use his 2 dice. He's going to try and take on this shade. We're trying to get this 5 over here. We're trying to get this 5 to take him out. So let's see what happens. No go. The shade is horrible. Okay, the shade stays. And that ends the knight's turn. All right, next up we have the wizard. The wizard. That reminds me of the NES movie. Alrighty, so he's going to move on over here. Unfortunately, because there's an enemy present, he gains a secrecy moving, but he loses a secrecy because he's going to a place with a villain. And since there's someone there, he has to choose whether he's going to evade or whether he is going to try and deal with his defense. So the wizard is going to try and, I'm thinking, let's take a look at him. I don't really see a whole bunch of powers that can really help. Okay, I'm gonna say we're gonna turn invisible. We're gonna try eluding. We're gonna +2 to eluding. We're gonna try that. And if I fail, then that invisibility card is gonna turn sideways. But I did fail. All right, so that's going to exhaust that ability as well, which is not great. And now that he's over here, and let's see here, he had to deal with that guy, which is not fun, but he's still got a turn. So you know what he's going to do? Mr. Wizard is going to go ahead, and he is going to choose for his action, he's going to choose to hide. And by choosing to hide, that just basically means his powers refresh. He gets to gain 1 secrecy because he's really low on secrecy. I think that's the best move. So we're going to do that. We're going to have him refresh his powers, and he's going to hide. So that ends his turn. He gains a secrecy now. Much needed. Ends his turn, refreshes both powers. The Scholar. Okay, let's see if he's going to have to deal with that event deck. He's got to deal with it. Here we go. Boop, boop. Shambling Horror. Of course it's a zombie. It says horror in it. All right, compared to secrecy, our Scholar has 6. So this guy, that's not good. Well, let's see here. But it just so happens that our Scholar is an excellent eluder. So we're going to go with that tactic, and hopefully that'll help him get away from this shambling horror. So here we go. Success. All right, very good. So, because he was eluding, so we beat the 3 of eluding on both dice. Well done. So that is not an issue, which is great. Now, let's see if he's that successful with his searching for a key, because we need 3 of these keys. We need 3 of these little cute little keys. These guys here, we need 3 of these to be able to unlock a holy relic. Here it goes. 2. Oh, gosh, this is just brutal. All right. As you can see, this game is not always easy. In fact, it's not always easy. It's very seldom easy, actually. So, all right, Mr. Scholar is set. Moving on to the Druid. You have to excuse me. I think I knocked over some of these the grace holder and the secrecy holder while I was holding the camera, so we'll have to fix that a little bit after this turn. So, Mr. Druid, what are you going to do? I think you're going to deal with the event deck. Grim Tidings. So this is from, as you can see, there's a little marker over here, which just kind of indicates what expansion it's from. But this is from the second expansion, which means, or I'm sorry, not the second expansion, but from the Inner Light deck, which means that because it's Tidings, we're going to draw a quest and roll a dice to determine its location. So it's time for that quest deck I was talking about. Oh boy, this could only be good. And by good, I mean not so great. Ghoul Infestation. The ghouls have grown too numerous. They are starting to attack the living for food. Cull their numbers to keep the people safe. Action. Fight versus 4 defense, and for each success, you get a little token. If you complete, you get to draw a search result. Ooh, that could be really good. I could get like that. That could be really good. And if it expires, that means that there's this little 5 on the top. You have 5 turns basically, and the thing expires. And you have these little tokens, which are these hourglass tokens. And if it gets 5 tokens on it, then it expires. If it expires, then this consequence happens, which is in this case a +1 to the darkness track, which is not great. So now we got to see where this thing is going to be placed. So it said roll 1 dice to determine its location off, and you do that off of the village. So let's see. I rolled a 1. So there's a 1, goes right up there. So that's where the quest takes place, is up here, which is actually is probably the worst place it could be, because that's right where the necromancer is. There's 2 blights. When dealing with a quest, it does not count as an action, which is nice. But still, like I said, it puts me in a pretty tough pinch right about now. So, all right. So the druid has gone. Nice going with that event. Nice move, dude. Nice going. All right. Well, he's already there, so I'm going to have him try and take on this taint here. I don't see any strengths, but we're just going to have to just hope he can take down that taint. So we'll roll. We need a 6, basically, because the 5 or we lose a grace. So a 1. That's the opposite of rolling a 6. So my druid is going to lose a health, a grace, and that taint is still an issue. Oh, this is not good for our heroes. And what's worse is now it's the necromancer's turn. We're going to increase the darkness track, and we're going to call it, and now he's going to place another blight. Let's see here. But first we need to see where he's going. So let's see who he detects. 4. So anything underneath 4. I know the wizard's in trouble. Is anyone else? Nope, just Mr. Wizard. So he detects the wizard, who is at 2 secrecy, and he moves in his direction. Let's see here. So seeing as I'm not really sure, he could go either way. They're both equally distant. I'd probably just follow on the track where it says, since there's a 4 right here, he'd go back to the village. Though, quite frankly, the necromancer probably just goes in the closest line way possible towards who he's pursuing. So he moves back over here, and he's going to place a blight. So let's see what that is. Oh, it's all good news. A curse is going to descend upon the village. A curse. Curse, let's see, you lose 1 grace when entering. Oh, man, this is not boding well for our heroes. Okay, and that ends his turn. So that's going to be really not so great for that druid. So that ends round 1 and round 2. And to be honest, most of the game pretty much plays out like that. Now, we do have some of these tokens, like I was talking beforehand, with the quest deck, where these every turn, basically when the next turn comes around, one of these gets placed on top. Like I said, if it reaches, in this case, 5, then it expires and this negative thing happens. If I come over, bring someone over here, and as a separate action, not one of your actions with your turn, but I can move over. I could, let's say if the scholar comes over the move, because he moves over here, he can do something over here with the quest. He can roll to see if he fights, and versus someone who's 4, and he rolled a 4, so he wins. So he gets a success token. If you get 2 success tokens on it, then you win the consequence. In this case, I draw a search result. I'd say, oh, I'm over in the mountains. The search result is a supply cache, which just basically means that you pick up 2 cards from your power deck. Mr. Scholar. 2 cards from your power deck. Take a look at them. Let's see, do I want to activate, do I want to have heroes gain 2 dice when eluding in the position? Or do I want to have a tactic where I can fight with 1 extra dice and before rolling pick 1 dice and add 1 to its result? Which one do I want? So that's kind of how some items work in this game, as well as how the quest situation is resolved in the game. So that pretty much entails most of the game. The only other difference is that when these relics are retrieved, they go on your character. And one of the things I do like, which is kind of very D&D like, is that you can, as you gain items, which as you guys can see by rolling, I did not get any, you can leave them anywhere on the board. So I can leave a key, 2 keys over here in the monastery, and have someone else who come over who has a 3rd key, pick up the other keys, and then they've got the 3 keys and they can just go somewhere and get the relic. So it's kind of nice that you can use that with equipment or artifacts or items. One of the other things is that this relic, also because it's so powerful, it attracts the necromancer's attention, so your secrecy automatically goes down when you have it. So it adds a little bit more difficulty as to because you need more reasons that this guy's really after you. So that's pretty much the majority of the game itself. We're going to take a look at some of the expansions cards that I have so you can get a feel for what that looks like. So stay tuned, and I hope you've enjoyed it thus far. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, oh my God, James, there's so much here, like I didn't realize this game was so complex. Well, thankfully, the game comes with this manual, which is actually very helpful. It's very well done and explained. As you open it up, it explains just even how some of the powers work and all the different setup and rules. But also what's really nice is on the back of it, they've clearly set up not only this list of all the different villains and blights that you're going to be dealing with and their special abilities, but over here it also kind of gives you a list of, when it's the necromancer's turns, this is what he needs to be looking at, and the order of how things work, and just keep everything clear. And then if you have a holy relic, here are the things you need to remember to keep that straight. And then over here, if you get these items, which are all included in the game in physical forms, there's little tokens which I have around here and everything, which I did not show you in the video because we didn't get that far. But if you get any of these tokens, these are what they stand for and what they all mean and what that means. And then there are these things over here, which some of these are not actual physical things, which you can't see, but here you go, that aren't necessarily physical things that affect your game, which come into play. So it's really nice having everything mapped out, which is helpful. But I really want to take the time to show you guys a couple things, specifically let you take a look at these cards from the Darkness, from the 3rd expansion, and just get a more feel for the quest deck, which you saw a little bit beforehand. So let's start with the quest deck. just as we showed before, basically these are just going to be different types of situations that are going to happen during the game. And in the modifying, basically the game, it adds another level of difficulty, as well as the fact that you can start with having them already out. You can start with them being already put in separate locations. It's just really cool because it adds a dynamic where you're going through and suddenly you feel like you're in complete control, and then a quest happens and you're like, oh, well, that's okay. I don't have to do this one, deal with the dark seed. So that's cool. I just won't focus on that. But while this is out, I might say, oh, well, it's in this area and it's got a blight, but maybe I can handle that. But as more quests come out and more quests, oh, there's another one. Oh, this is bad because the darkness track is so high. I could really use that artifact. But do I want to focus on the secret convoy, or do I still need to focus on getting that key? So it just kind of distracts you from your original goal, which is nice. It adds an extra level of tension. But really, I wanted to also just showcase this darkness deck, because basically this is from the Abyss expansion, and it's just going to hopefully allow you to make a better decision as to whether that is for you. But I also want to show how that will really empower the Necromancer's abilities. So the first one is the Hidden Tomb. If a hero successfully fights the Necromancer at a location other than the swamp, the Necromancer moves to the swamp instead of the usual effect. So basically, you got to beat him at the swamp, or else he's always going to be in play. Enervation. Heroes at the Necromancer's location cannot refresh their powers. Any hero that fails a combat against the Necromancer must exhaust a power if possible. Overwhelm. If the Necromancer creates the 4th blight in this location during this turn, he also immediately creates a blight in the monastery. Hall of Mirrors. The Necromancer's influence covers 2 locations at once: the mountains and the castles, the villages and the swamps, the forests and the ruins. Heroes at the alternate location lose secrecy and can be attacked as if at the Necromancer's location. If the Necromancer is defeated in combat, he can sacrifice a blight from either location to escape. This is very deadly for a Necromancer, as in if you're up against him, because this is just hard to beat. Shatter Hope. This is one of my favorites. The heroes immediately discards a holy relic they have recovered. If they have not yet recovered a relic, they discard the first one they recover. Man, brutal. The Necromancer creates an extra blight on turns where his movement roll is 5 or 6. Faithful Servants. Draw a map card, look up the blight for the village, and place the corresponding blight token on this card. The Necromancer generates the same effect as that type of blight. Every hero loses 1 grace, loses 1 secrecy, and exhausts a power. This effect repeats the first time the darkness track reaches a multiple of 5, and once at 5, once at 10, once at 15, and so on. Heroes of the Necromancer's location roll -1 dice on all rolls. Activate at the end of the Necromancer's turn. Adds 1 at the start of the Necromancer's turn, darkness. Deactivate if a blight is destroyed. At the start of the Necromancer's turn, if there are any blights in the monastery, activate this card. At the start of the Necromancer's next turn, if there are still any blights in the monastery, the heroes lose the game. When the Necromancer moves to a location with no blights, he creates an extra one. If the Necromancer already has this ability, he creates an extra blight when moving to a location with 1 blight. Whenever a hero destroys a blight, that hero loses 1 grace. Heroes at the Necromancer's location combat him instead of drawing an event, even if their secrecy is not at 0. They will lose 1 secrecy at the start of the turn as normal. Oof. The Necromancer creates an extra blight on his turn if there are no heroes at his location. Create a blight in the monastery when the Necromancer's movement roll is at 6. If a hero fails a combat against the Necromancer without rolling a 5 or higher, they do not suffer a wound, but create a new blight at the Necromancer's location. Keep in mind, that blight is going to be, you can't beat the Necromancer with the blight there. And lastly, Desolation, when the Necromancer ends a turn at a location with 2 or more heroes, and this card is not active, any of them activate on a random hero at that location. Other heroes lose 1 grace when ending a turn at this hero's location. Deactivate if the hero prays. So these are just some of the cool things of the 3rd expansion. Hopefully you guys can decide if it's something you're interested in.
Okay, guys, that was the base game for Darkest Night. I also included some of the different expansions. I own a couple of them. There are 3 expansions to this game, not including, of course, the base game. I own 2 of them. I own the first expansion, which is this one, which is Within Inner Light, as well as the fact that I own the 3rd expansion, which basically adds more powers to the Necromancer. So really, I'm just going to focus on those and what I think about those 2. And obviously, if you're interested in the second one, you can go ahead and check it out at Dice Tower, or actually, Board Game Brawl, I think, might have it. But anyways, so let's talk about it. First of all, pick up and play. Setup takes about 7 minutes. That's also meaning that you're sitting down and you're choosing your characters and you're figuring out which power sets you want to start with, which is kind of cool because it allows you to kind of customize your character even more so. I also like the fact that each character basically has their own kind of stats, which is kind of cool. Takedown is about 10 minutes or so. You want to keep it organized. I use baggies just because it makes things so much simpler. And that just makes it simple, which makes it simple, like I just said. Can I say simple 8 more times? That would be great. Now, let's talk about the components. I'm not a massive fan of the components. Let me tell you what I like, and let me tell you what I don't like. What I do like about the components is the artwork. If you can tell, take a look, is really, really nice. I mean, the artwork is phenomenal. I mean, granted, the artwork on the power cards aren't so great with their little icons, but that aside, the artwork of the enemies and the board and other elements of the game is just phenomenal. So, I mean, the artwork is great and adds a lot of flavor to the game. One thing I don't like about the components is the soot. Victory Point Games isn't exactly renowned for being the highest quality of components, just because they're not a big company who's out doing this, and they have a really cool story about the company where basically if you're looking for kind of like a up and coming to support something that's up and coming, like this is kind of a company for you because they make their games built for the order. So as in, like, if you place if you're making an order on Amazon, then you know what? Amazon just ships it from their inventory and it shows up and it's great. If you make an order from Victory Point Games, they make the components of the games for you. That's like, as in they cut it out. They print everything for you. It's all for you, which is great. So I think that's pretty cool. I think that's very gutsy as a company. And obviously as a gamer, I think that's great to support that kind of entrepreneurial spirit. With that being said, let's get down to the gameplay. I think it's simplistic and it's great. Like I mentioned, it's kind of got a Diablo feel to it. And let me tell you, if you're a fan of The Lord of the Rings, you throw some Howard Shore music on, and this thing becomes epic. I mean, let me tell you, there's nothing like making a roll. You're just about to roll, and basically, you've got the Fellowship of the Ring theme ringing through, backing you up. Or if you're facing some bad guy or the evil necromancer, and suddenly Sauron's theme comes over, you're like, oh, this is gonna be crazy. I hope I make this one. So it really enhances, and I highly recommend playing it in that manner. I like the fact that the characters are so customizable. I like the fact that you can upgrade your equipment, your powers. You can gain items that allow you to do things, just simple things like re-rolling, but still it's cool. And you can increase your chances of winning. But you're also taking the chance of allowing that darkness track to keep going and going. And for the Necromancer, you get another set of powers, and they're all really significant hindrances to you winning. Not to mention if you're playing with that 3rd expansion, which is the Abyss expansion, where it really randomizes the power set. Unfortunately, when you're playing this game, sometimes you realize you kind of can manipulate it because you know how the game's going to work. You know what powers he's going to get, when he's going to get them. So it allows you to kind of map and play to that strength. for you. But it kind of deters from the game from that experience. So I really like the fact that, with this third expansion, you really don't know what you're getting. And sometimes, this guy will get a power which will just jack you up. So I think that's really cool about the third expansion. I like the fact, like I said before, the characters are really well balanced. None of them are lame. No character, even the priest. I mean, whoever would want a group want to be, oh yeah, I'm the priest. I mean, maybe if you're a Christian, but other than that, you're not really that interested. But the cool thing is, every character has something to contribute. Everyone has this really awesome power that helps, and they have these other powers which are kind of okay and help out, which is cool. The base game itself, this one comes with about 9 characters in it, and every expansion basically comes with about 4 and everything. Now, one downside I would say to this game, which is why I don't play it as often as I'd like to, is just because it is long. I mean, it can be like 2.5 hours of gameplay, and that's assuming that you're not trying to beef your characters up, because you don't want to go up against a necromancer and get beat down and get hampered, and then you have to recover and then try again later on, and hopefully his forces aren't stronger now, and so this game can go on and on to the point where, quite frankly, as someone who's employed, I'll have to play some when I get home, stop, and just come back the next day and pick up from there. Which brings me to one of the things I really like about this game is, the people who designed it really had single player in mind. I mean, they had solitaire games in mind, and that's just really evident. Just like even something simple like the tokens with the day and night tokens, which show whose turn it is. So even if you get like a phone call or you got to go do something like randomly in the middle of the game, you can come back and pick up exactly where you were and not be lost, which is just so helpful. I even love the fact that on the board, the way the board is set up with the dice mechanic, the necromancer really moves on his own. So it's just another thing you don't have to worry about, which is just so helpful when you're playing on your own. I also really like the fact that the game its difficulty is really customizable. I mean, you can play the base game, but like I said, so once you've played a couple times, you kind of know how to manipulate the system. But there are various different modes that you can play, or various different challenges that you can go about, variations that you can use, and then you can get an expansion. And with the expansion comes even more variations, even more additional modes. And then if you get another expansion, then it's even more. So one of the things that I've been finding is, even though I've been beating this game pretty regularly, I've decided that, next time I start playing, I'm going to start playing with the variations and everything. And I expect a really different level of difference. So you're not buying something and then being like, oh, well, I beat that all the time. It's not really challenging anymore. You just got to find the difficulty that's right for you, which is just great. I really like this game. I love the theme. I think it's just spectacular. I love the fact that it's got a very pandemic co-op feel to it, which is really cool. And I really look forward to playing it over and over and over, because it's just a fun game, and it's just well done. It's just really well done. So let's bring it up to the cost. It's all about the dollar bills these days. What do I think? Well, the base game will probably run you about $49. Each expansion, the first expansion is about 20, the second one's about 25, I think. The third one's about 20. You can get the base game with the first and second expansion for about $77.99 plus tax on Victory Points Games website. They have a special Necromancer bundle which they offer, which is exclusive through that website. I'll be honest, with my experience, it kind of depends on your situation. I'm over here in the East Coast, so when I was doing the math with the shipping and everything, to be honest, the Necromancer bundle actually didn't save me anything, so I didn't go through with it. But if you're on the other side of the country, to be honest, it might be something to check into, because it comes with this expansion and the other expansion that I don't have, the second expansion. And I gotta say, if you like the base game, this expansion is really the way to go, just because it just adds so much to it with the quest deck, which I believe you guys saw in the video. But also it just adds so much more, because that dynamic of, oh, am I going to face the necromancer? I got to build up my character. Am I going to try and take out the necromancer? But I also got to, this quest. If I don't take care of this quest, it's going to empower the necromancer, which is a problem. And it would be good for me to be able to get, like, if I can beat it, I can get a cool result, which would be awesome. But I got to focus on getting these keys so that I can get this relic so I can win. And it just creates a really cool dynamic of choices to make in the game. And also, one of the really nice things I like about this game is that if you have a flair for the dramatic, it's very cool that you can kind of have a narration of what's happening in the game, of just like, you flip over a card and you see, oh, there's a vampire that shows up in the village, and you can say something like, darkness falls on in the village, and as the villagers close the doors, they suddenly notice a man walking through. Supposedly, he drinks his victim's blood. I mean, like, just really cool thematic experiences that you can just kind of add. Once again, throw some Howard Shore music on, and you got adventure right there. So what do I think? Do I recommend the game? I think you already know what my answer is. Absolutely. I say go check it out. Darkest Night, and it gets thumbs up from me. So hey, this is James. Go play some games.